Picture this nightmare-made flesh, a creature stalking the mountains with the roar of a lion, the gnashing teeth of a goat, and the hissing venom of a serpent, all twisted into one monstrous form. Flames erupt from its jaws, scorching the earth as it moves, a living catastrophe draped in fur and scales. This is the Chimaera, not just a beast of legend, but a mirror held up to humanity's deepest fears. Across 3,000 years, its story has slithered through cultures, from ancient campfires to modern screens, always leaving scorch marks on our imagination. Today, we're unraveling 30 of its most chilling legends tales where this hybrid horror isn't just a monster but a symbol of chaos, a challenge for heroes, and even a warning from the gods. By the time we're done, you'll see why this abomination never truly died, it just learned new ways to haunt us. Now, let's dig into the very first legend that gave life to this nightmare, the birth of the Chimaera as told by Hesiod in his ancient work, Theogony. According to Hesiod, the Chimaera wasn't just some random monster. It was born from two of the most terrifying beings in Greek mythology, Typhon, the storm giant whose very breath could shake mountains, and Echidna, the half-woman, half-serpent mother of all monsters. Imagine inheriting the worst traits from both parents: raw, unstoppable power and a twisted, monstrous form. That's the Chimaera. Hesiod paints it as more than just a beast, it's a walking disaster. Its lion's head roars with the fury of storms, its goat's body claws through the earth like an earthquake, and its serpent's tail whips with the unpredictability of a landslide. And then there's the fire. Its breath isn't just hot, it's an all-consuming blaze, a living wildfire. To the ancient Greeks, this wasn't just a scary story. It was a metaphor for the uncontrollable forces of nature. When volcanoes erupted or storms leveled villages, they saw the Chimaera's work. But here's the chilling part: Hesiod didn't just describe a monster. He gave chaos a face, a form, and a family. The Chimaera wasn't alone. Its siblings included Cerberus, the three-headed hound of the Underworld, and the Hydra, the many-headed serpent. Together, they were a pantheon of destruction, each embodying a different kind of terror. The Chimaera's role: to be the unstoppable force that heroes couldn't outfight, only outsmart. And that's exactly what sets the stage for our next legend, the hero who dared to face it. Now, let's turn the page to one of the most legendary showdowns in Greek mythology, the epic battle between the hero Bellerophon and the Chimaera. This wasn't just a fight, it was a clash of destiny, where raw courage met divine intervention. Bellerophon, a mortal with a heart full of ambition, was tasked with an impossible mission: to slay the unkillable beast. But here's the twist: he didn't go alone. Enter Pegasus, the majestic winged horse, a gift from the gods themselves. The Chimaera, with its lion's strength, goat's resilience, and serpent's venom, was a nightmare made flesh. No sword could pierce its hide, no arrow could find its mark, and its fiery breath turned the battlefield into an inferno. Bellerophon quickly realized brute force wouldn't work. This monster was designed to outlast any warrior. That's when Athena, the goddess of wisdom, stepped in. She handed Bellerophon a golden bridle, a divine tool to tame Pegasus and turn the tide of battle. With Pegasus under his command, Bellerophon took to the skies, dodging flames and striking from above. The Chimaera, grounded and furious, couldn't match the speed and precision of a winged assault. In a final, desperate move, Bellerophon drove a lead-tipped spear into the beast's throat. Its own fire melted the lead, choking it from within. The invincible monster fell, not to sheer strength, but to strategy and a little help from the gods. This legend isn't just about a hero's triumph, it's a lesson in humility. Even the mightiest warriors need wisdom, and sometimes the key to victory isn't in your hands, but in the hands of those who believe in you. And with the Chimaera defeated, the stage is set for another chapter, one where the monster's legacy takes root in the lands it once terrorized. But the legend of the Chimaera didn't end with Bellerophon's victory. Far from the battlefields of Greek myth, the beast's shadow lingered in the rugged hills of ancient Lycia, where local folklore gave it a terrifying second life. Here, the Chimaera wasn't just a monster, it was a force of nature woven into the very landscape. Lycian villagers whispered of a creature that emerged from the earth itself, its fiery breath mirroring the volcanic vents that dotted the region. These weren't just stories to scare children, they were explanations for the unexplained. When flames burst from the ground or landslides swallowed homes, the Chimaera took the blame. Its lion's roar became the rumble of earthquakes, its serpents hissed the sound of escaping gas, and its goat's stubbornness the unyielding rock of the mountains. Even today, the legacy of those tales burns bright. In modern Turkey, the ancient Lycian lands are home to Mount Chimaera, where natural gas vents ignite eternal flames that have burned for thousands of years. Locals once believed these fires were the beast's last breaths, a reminder that some monsters never truly die. Tourists now hike the trails to witness the phenomenon, standing where terrified villagers once fled, proving that myth and reality often share the same ground. This chapter of the Chimaera's story shows how legends evolve, twisting fear into folklore and landscape into legend. And as the flames of Mount Chimaera flicker into the night, they light the way to the next tale, where the beast takes on a new role, not as a destroyer, but as an omen of doom in the pages of Homer's Iliad. Now, let's turn the page from fiery landscapes to the ink-stained scrolls of Homer's Iliad, where the Chimaera takes on a role far more sinister than a mere physical threat. Here, the monster isn't just a creature, it's a symbol, a dark whisper of fate woven into the epic's tapestry of war. Homer's mention of the Chimaera is brief, barely a flicker in the grand sweep of the Iliad, but its impact is anything but small. When Glaucus, a Lycian ally of the Trojans, recounts the beast in a speech, it's not to boast of its defeat, it's to warn. The Chimaera becomes an omen, a harbinger of the bloodshed to come, its hybrid form mirroring the chaos of battle. This isn't just poetic flair. Homer's choice to invoke the Chimaera at this moment is deliberate. The monster's lion's ferocity, its goat's stubbornness, and its serpent's venom foreshadow the brutal death of Patroclus, Achilles' beloved companion. Just as the Chimaera's parts clash unnaturally, so too does Patroclus' fate, a hero cut down not by honor but by deception and divine meddling. The beast's fire becomes the spark of Achilles' rage, a fury that will consume both armies before the war's end. And there's a deeper layer. The Chimaera's Lycian roots tie Glaucus' speech back to the land where the monster once roamed, linking Troy's allies to a legacy of destruction. It's as if Homer is saying, the terror of the past is prologue. The flames that once scorched Lycia now ignite the Trojan War's darkest hours. Even in absence, the Chimaera's shadow looms, its mythic DNA encoded in every betrayal, every fallen warrior. So while the beast never physically appears in the Iliad, its presence is undeniable. Homer doesn't need to describe its fangs or flames. The mere mention of its name is enough to conjure doom. And as the war grinds on, the Chimaera's legacy shifts once more, not just as a monster or omen, but as a cultural bridge. Because next we'll see how its image traveled even farther, etched into the stone of Hittite temples where lion, goat, and serpent took on new meaning. But long before Homer's Iliad, the Chimaera's twisted form was already taking shape far from Greece, carved into the stone walls of Hittite temples. These ancient reliefs, some dating back over 3,000 years, show creatures eerily similar to the Greek monster, blending lion and goat features in ways that can't be coincidence. The Hittites, a powerful civilization in what's now Turkey, worshipped gods of storms and chaos, and their art often mirrored that untamed energy. Here, the lion-goat hybrid wasn't just a monster, it was a symbol of divine power, a bridge between earth and sky. What's fascinating is how these images traveled. The Hittites traded with Mycenaean Greeks, exchanging goods, stories, and perhaps even nightmares. It's easy to imagine a Greek merchant spotting one of these carvings in a Hittite marketplace, the image searing into memory before making its way into Hesiod's poetry centuries later. But the Hittite version wasn't just copied, it evolved. Where their reliefs hinted at a guardian spirit, the Greeks sharpened it into a terror, adding the serpent's tail and fiery breath. Yet traces of that older meaning linger. Some Hittite hybrids clutch thunderbolts, linking them to storm gods, while others flank gateways as protectors. This duality, destroyer and guardian, echoes in the Greek chimeras' role as both omen and challenge for heroes like Bellerophon. The real mystery isn't just how the image spread, but why it resonated across cultures. Perhaps the answer lies in trade routes where myths traveled like spices and silk, adapting to new lands while keeping their monstrous heart, and that heart still beats. Modern archaeologists have found Hittite seals depicting chimeric creatures as far as Syria, proving how far these symbols roamed. So when Homer's Glaucus speaks of the chimera, he's not just invoking a local legend, he's tapping into a mythic network that spanned empires. Next, we'll see how Virgil twisted this legacy further, plunging the beast into the shadows of the underworld. But the story of the chimera doesn't end with earthly battles or ancient carvings. Centuries after Homer and the Hittites, the Roman poet Virgil reimagined the beast in a far darker setting, the underworld itself. In his epic, the Aeneid, the chimera takes on a terrifying new role, no longer just a monster of flesh and fire, but a ghostly sentinel at the gates of the dead. Virgil's version is a chilling departure from earlier myths. Gone is the creature that once terrorized Lycia or challenged heroes like Bellerophon. Instead, this chimera is a spectral force, its three heads howling in the shadows as it guards the entrance to Hades. Virgil paints it as part of a nightmarish trio, alongside the Hydra and the 100-armed giant, all serving as eternal wardens of the underworld. The flames it breathes aren't just fire, they're the torment of the damned, a constant reminder of the horrors awaiting the unjust. What makes this transformation so striking is how it flips the chimera's original meaning. In Greek myths, the beast was a physical threat, something a hero could slay with courage and divine help. But in Virgil's Underworld, it becomes something far more abstract, an embodiment of fear itself, impossible to defeat because it exists beyond the realm of the living. This shift reflects Rome's own fascination with death and the afterlife, where monsters weren't just obstacles but symbols of moral reckoning, yet traces of its past remain. The lion's roar, the goat's piercing cry, the serpent's hiss, they all echo its older earthly form. Even in the underworld, the chimera can't escape its hybrid nature. Virgil's genius was in taking a familiar monster and twisting it into something both new and eerily recognizable. Where once it represented chaos in the living world, now it enforces the order of the dead. This underworld chimera would leave a lasting mark. Later poets and artists drew on Virgil's vision, blending it with older myths until the creature became a fixture in tales of the afterlife. But as we'll see next, not every culture saw the beast as a mere monster. Some turned it into a mirror for the human soul itself. Now let's turn our attention to how the chimera took on new life in the hands of Etruscan artists. Far from the shadowy underworld of Virgil's imagination, this ancient Italian civilization gave the monster a striking physical form, one that still survives today in their intricate bronze sculptures. The Etruscans didn't just copy Greek myths, they reinvented them, and their version of the chimera is proof. The most famous example is the Chimaera of Arezzo, a breathtaking bronze statue dating back to around 400 BC. At first glance, it's unmistakably the same beast lion's body, goat's head sprouting from its back, serpent for a tail. But look closer and the differences leap out. The Etruscans added wings, something never mentioned in Greek or Roman texts. These aren't just decorative, they're massive, sweeping curves that make the creature seem ready to take flight. Was this a regional twist or simply an artist's flourish? Scholars still argue. Some believe the wings connect to Etruscan beliefs about the afterlife, where hybrid creatures often served as guardians or guides. Others think it's pure artistic daring, a way to make an already terrifying monster even more dynamic. The craftsmanship itself is a clue. Every muscle on the lion's body is tense, the goat's face twisted in agony or rage, the serpent's tail coiled to strike. This isn't just a mythical beast, it's a masterpiece of motion frozen in bronze. What's fascinating is how the Etruscans balanced respect for tradition with their own creativity. They kept the Chimaera's core hybrid nature but made it distinctly theirs. Even the materials tell a story. Bronze was prized in Etruria, used for everything from jewelry to temple offerings. By casting the monster in this metal, they might have been elevating its status, turning it into something sacred rather than just fearsome. Yet mysteries remain. Why place the goat's head so prominently, almost as if it's screaming at the sky? Why give a land-bound creature wings unless it was meant to symbolize something beyond physical terror? The Etruscans left no written explanations, so we're left to piece together their intentions from the art itself. One thing's certain, their Chimaera wasn't just a copy. It was a reinvention, proving that even the most iconic monsters could take on new meanings in new hands. This blend of familiarity and innovation would echo through history, as we'll soon see when the Chimaera leaps from myth into philosophy, becoming not just a monster but a mirror for the human mind. But the Chimaera's story doesn't end with art. It takes a fascinating turn into the realm of philosophy. Centuries after the Etruscans cast their winged bronze beast, the great thinker Plato saw something deeper in the monster's hybrid form. In his famous allegory of the tripartite soul, he described human nature as a constant struggle between three forces: reason, spirit, and appetite. Sound familiar? It's almost as if he looked at the Chimaera's three heads and saw a perfect metaphor for our inner battles. Let's break it down. Plato imagined the rational part of the soul as the lion, noble but capable of fierce aggression when threatened. The goat represented our spirited side, driven by emotions like pride or ambition, often stubbornly climbing toward desires, and the serpent, that was raw appetite, the primal cravings that could poison judgment if left unchecked. Suddenly, this ancient monster wasn't just a physical threat, it was a mirror held up to every human mind. Philosophers have debated this connection for ages. Some argue Plato intentionally borrowed the Chimaera's form to make his abstract ideas more vivid. After all, what better way to explain internal conflict than with a creature literally at war with itself? Others suggest it's coincidence that hybrid monsters simply reflect universal fears about divided natures. Either way, the parallel stuck. Later thinkers, from Renaissance scholars to modern psychologists, would revisit this idea, using the Chimaera to explore everything from moral dilemmas to mental health. What's striking is how the monster's meaning flipped. Once a symbol of external chaos, it became a tool for understanding inner turmoil. Even the fiery breath took on new significance, not just destruction, but the burning passions that drive or consume us. Plato's reinterpretation proved myths could be more than stories. They could be frameworks for grappling with the human condition, and this was just the beginning. As philosophy evolved, so did the Chimaera's role, setting the stage for even bolder reinventions. Next, we'll see how oracles and prophets transformed the beast from a psychological metaphor into an omen of doom. Now the Chimaera takes on a new role, not just as a monster or a metaphor, but as a messenger of fate. Ancient oracles, those mysterious voices between gods and mortals, began weaving the creature into their prophecies as a sign of looming disaster. Picture this: a trembling king stands before the priestess at Delphi, seeking guidance, only to hear her describe a vision of the three-headed beast breathing fire across his kingdom. That wasn't just poetic flair, it was a dire warning. The oracle at Delphi, the most revered in Greece, had a knack for cryptic symbolism, and the Chimaera became one of her go-to omens. Historical accounts tell of prophecies where its appearance signaled everything from barbarian invasions to bloody civil wars. Why this creature? Its very form told a story. The lion's aggression, the goat's stubbornness, the serpent's deceit, all traits that could tear a society apart. When cities faced internal strife, priests might interpret earthquakes or wildfires as the Chimaera's breath manifesting in the real world. One chilling example comes from the 6th century before the Common Era, when the oracle allegedly warned the city of Thebes about the Chimaera's shadow falling over their walls. Soon after, a power struggle between noble families erupted into violence, echoing the monster's divided nature. Even neighboring Lycia, where the beast supposedly once roamed, took these prophecies seriously. Their coins bore the Chimaera's image not just as myth, but as a reminder of chaos waiting to strike. What's fascinating is how these prophecies flipped the creature's meaning yet again. No longer just a physical threat or psychological symbol, it became a kind of divine shorthand, a way for the gods to say, "Beware, the pieces are already moving toward disaster." And that idea stuck. Centuries later, Roman augurs would still scan the skies for signs of the beast during times of unrest, proving that some legends refused to fade quietly. But the Chimaera's journey wasn't done. As empires rose and fell, a new group would seize its image not for philosophy or prophecy, but for something far more unexpected. Now the Chimaera undergoes another transformation, this time into a symbol of spiritual corruption. As Christianity spread across the Byzantine Empire, artists and theologians faced a challenge: how to repurpose the terrifying creatures of pagan myths to serve their new faith. The answer: turn them into demons. In the glittering mosaics of Ravenna and Constantinople, the Chimaera shed its ancient Greek roots and became a warning against sin. Picture a 6th century church floor where once it might have been a hero battling the beast. Now the creature writhes under the feet of saints, its 3 heads twisted in agony. The lion's roar became the snarl of pride, the goat's stubbornness symbolized greed, and the serpent's flickering tongue whispered heresy. One striking example comes from the Basilica of San Vitale, where the Chimaera appears coiled around a tree, a clear nod to the serpent in Eden. But here, it's not just temptation, it's chaos itself, its hybrid form embodying the unnatural sins early Christians feared most. Even its fire-breathing took on new meaning, no longer a natural disaster, but the flames of hell licking at the faithful. What's fascinating is how these mosaics borrowed from older myths while twisting their meaning. The same Lycian coins that once honored the Chimaera as a regional symbol now inspired artists to depict it as a demon crushed by Archangel Michael. And in Syrian churches, its image merged with local dragon legends, creating monstrous hybrids that warned congregations against straying from doctrine. This wasn't just artistic license, it was ideological warfare. By demonizing the Chimaera, the church sent a clear message: the old gods were not just false, but actively evil. And the strategy worked. Centuries later, medieval bestiaries would inherit this vision, turning the creature into a textbook example of moral corruption. But that's a story for another legend. Now let's step into the shadowy halls of medieval monasteries, where scribes transformed the Chimaera into something even more unsettling: a walking sermon. In the pages of illuminated bestiaries, the creature wasn't just a monster, it was a mirror held up to human vice. Picture a 12th century manuscript, its margins crawling with hybrid horrors. Here, the Chimaera's lion head might snarl beside a bishop's warning against pride, while its goat neck twisted into a symbol of lust, but the real shock. Artists kept adding new horrors: scorpion tails lashing at sinners, bat wings shrouded in shadow, even extra heads sprouting like poisonous fruit. One infamous example comes from the Aberdeen bestiary, where the Chimaera coils around a tree of knowledge, but this isn't Eden. The serpent tail now drips venom onto a king's crown, a none too subtle jab at corrupt rulers. Meanwhile, the Rochester bestiary gives it dragon claws clutching coins, turning Bellerophon's old foe into an allegory for greed. These weren't just illustrations, they were moral puzzles. Monks would trace their fingers over the beast's disjointed body, deciphering which sin each grotesque limb represented. What's fascinating is how these books borrowed from and warped ancient sources. Pliny the Elder once described the Chimaera as a natural wonder, but medieval scribes crossed out his words and scribbled diabolus in the margins. Even the creature's fire-breathing got a dark makeover. Now it wasn't just flames, but the burning lies of heretics. By the time these bestiaries reached wealthy nobles, the Chimaera had become shorthand for any threat to the social order, from rebellious peasants to scholars questioning church doctrine. Yet amid all this fear-mongering, there's a twisted creativity at work. A French manuscript gives the beast a human face screaming from its belly, while German artists festooned it with extra eyes like some nightmare version of a saint's halo. This wasn't just demonization, it was reinvention, and as we'll soon see, that reinvention would take an even more spectacular turn when Renaissance artists got their hands on the legend. But as the medieval world gave way to the Renaissance, the Chimaera shed its moral shackles and emerged as something far more thrilling, a test of artistic genius. In Florence, where marble and bronze seemed to breathe with life, sculptors saw the monster not as a warning but as the ultimate creative puzzle. Take Benvenuto Cellini's Perseus, gripping Medusa's head high above Piazza della Signoria. Look closer at the base there, writhing beneath the hero's feet, is a Chimaera so lifelike you can almost hear its three throats snarling. Cellini didn't just carve a monster, he weaponized anatomy. The lion's mane flows like molten gold, the goat's neck twists in agony, and the serpent tail whips around Perseus' ankle with terrifying precision. This wasn't just decoration, it was a brazen challenge to other artists. Try to outdo this, the sculpture seems to say, flaunting how seamlessly Cellini fused three species into one cohesive nightmare. Meanwhile, in his cluttered notebooks, Leonardo da Vinci approached the Chimaera like a scientist. His sketches dissect its form not as a demon but as a biological possibility. One page shows the creature's ribcage, meticulously drawn to support both lion and goat organs. Another explores how its serpent tail might articulate, complete with tendon studies worthy of a medical textbook. For Leonardo, the Chimaera wasn't a symbol of sin, it was the ultimate exercise in understanding nature's building blocks. What's remarkable is how these Renaissance interpretations flipped the script. No longer just a cautionary tale, the Chimaera became a celebration of human ingenuity, proof that artists could rival the gods in creating life. And as we'll discover next, this creative fire would spread far beyond Italy's borders, igniting new legends in the most unexpected places. Now, let's step into the shadowy workshops of alchemists, where the Chimaera took on a whole new meaning, not as a monster to fear, but as a riddle to solve. Hidden in the cryptic pages of medieval alchemical texts, the creature became a living symbol of transformation, its three heads representing the volatile stages of the philosopher's stone. Picture a dimly lit chamber where men in stained robes pored over manuscripts like the Ripley scroll, tracing the Chimaera's form as if it held the secret to turning lead into gold. In these arcane diagrams, the lion stood for sulfur, fiery and unyielding. The goat embodied mercury, shifting and elusive, while the serpent's tail symbolized salt, binding the elements together. Alchemists believed the Chimaera's hybrid nature mirrored the chaotic process of purification, where base metals had to endure dissolution and rebirth to achieve perfection. One particularly vivid illustration in the Ripley scroll shows the beast engulfed in flames, its bodies merging and separating like molten metals in a crucible. What's fascinating is how these alchemists twisted the Chimaera's myth into a metaphor for their own obsession. Where poets saw terror, they saw potential, a blueprint for the ultimate transformation. And just as the creature defied natural laws, so too did they chase the impossible, convinced that its form held the key to unlocking nature's greatest secrets. But as we'll soon see, the Chimaera's journey wasn't confined to laboratories. Its legend would slither northward, finding a chilling counterpart in the frostbitten myths of the Norse. But the Chimaera's shadow stretches far beyond the alchemist's fire, into the frozen heart of Norse mythology, where another monstrous figure gnaws at the roots of the world. Meet Nidhogg, the serpent dragon coiled beneath Yggdrasil, the great tree that binds the Norse cosmos. Like the Chimaera, Nidhogg is a creature of chaos, its endless chewing a slow unraveling of order. Yet while the Greek beast roared across Lycian skies, Nidhogg lurks in darkness, its venom-dripped fangs threatening the very fabric of existence. Scholars have long debated whether these two horrors share a common ancestor in ancient Indo-European myths, or if their similarities are mere echoes of humanity's universal fears. Both embody destruction, the Chimaera through fire and hybrid savagery, Nidhogg through relentless decay. But where the Chimaera's three heads symbolize disparate elements, Nidhogg's singular focus on devouring Yggdrasil reflects a more insidious threat, the inevitability of collapse. Some argue their parallels run deeper than coincidence. The Hittites, ancestors to both Greek and Norse cultures, worshipped dragon-like creatures of their own, suggesting a shared mythological thread. Others point to trade routes weaving these stories across continents, morphing with each retelling. Or perhaps it's simpler. Hybrid monsters and world-eating serpents are primal metaphors, emerging independently to explain the inexplicable, whether volcanic fury or the slow rot of time. One thing is certain, from the Mediterranean to the Nordic frost, humanity has always conjured beasts to give shape to its deepest dreads. And as we'll soon see, Persia would add its own terrifying twist to this lineage with a creature even more uncanny. Now let's journey eastward, where Persia's own nightmare creature lurks, the manticore, a beast so bizarre it makes the Chimaera seem almost tame by comparison. Picture this: the body of a lion, the face of a man, and a tail bristling with venomous spines. Unlike the Chimaera's fiery breath, the manticore kills with precision, shooting its deadly quills like arrows. But here's where things get intriguing. Ancient trade routes didn't just carry spices and silk, they smuggled myths. As Greek merchants traveled east, stories of the Chimaera likely tangled with Persian tales of the manticore, blurring the lines between the two. Herodotus, the famed Greek historian, might have accidentally fueled the confusion. When he described the manticore in his writings, he borrowed details from Indian and Persian accounts, but scholars suspect he mixed in traits of the Chimaera too. Was it a mistake, or did he see them as two faces of the same terror? The manticore's human-like face adds another layer of horror. It's not just a monster, but a twisted reflection of ourselves. While the Chimaera symbolized untamed nature, the manticore represented something more calculated. In Persian lore, it was a hunter stalking its prey with human-like cunning. Some even claimed it could mimic voices to lure victims. Yet both creatures shared a purpose: to embody the unknown dangers lurking beyond the edges of the civilized world. So were they cousins, separated by geography, or rivals competing for the title of ultimate hybrid horror? Either way, their stories remind us that fear is a universal language, one that travels as easily as the merchants who carried these legends across deserts and mountains. And speaking of twisted tales, our next stop takes us to the pages of Shakespeare, where the Chimaera becomes a symbol of something far more human: betrayal. Shifting from the tangled myths of Persia, we find the Chimaera slithering into the world of Shakespeare, where it takes on a new kind of terror, not as a beast of fire and fang, but as a symbol of political chaos. In plays like Macbeth and Henry VI, Shakespeare twists the Chimaera's hybrid form into a metaphor for rebellion and deceit, showing how the monstrous can lurk in human ambition. Take Macbeth, where the unnatural is everywhere: daggers drawn by invisible hands, forests that walk, kings murdered by trusted friends. When Macbeth himself is called a hellhound, the echo of the Chimaera's lion-headed fury is hard to miss. But it's Lady Macbeth who truly channels the creature's spirit. Her famous cry, look like the innocent flower but be the serpent under it, could be the Chimaera's motto, a beautiful surface hiding venom beneath. Then there's Henry VI, where civil war tears England apart. Shakespeare describes the rebellion as a many-headed monster, a direct nod to the Chimaera's tangled anatomy. One line even warns of fire-eyed fury, mirroring the beast's flaming breath. Here, the Chimaera isn't just a monster, it's the chaos of betrayal, the unnatural act of turning on one's own. What's fascinating is how Shakespeare strips away the scales and claws, leaving only the Chimaera's essence, the horror of things that shouldn't be. Kings killing kings, sons rising against fathers. These are the real hybrid horrors, and they're far more terrifying because they're human. Yet, just as the myths warned, rebellion always consumes its creators. Macbeth falls, the rebels in Henry VI crumble, and the Chimaera's lesson holds true. Defy the natural order, and you'll burn in the chaos you create. And speaking of fire, our next legend leaps from the stage to the page, where romantic poets like Shelley and Keats reimagine the Chimaera as a muse not of terror, but of impossible beauty. Leaving behind the political shadows of Shakespeare, we step into the luminous world of romantic poetry, where the Chimaera sheds its monstrous skin to become something even more haunting, a symbol of the unattainable. For poets like Percy Shelley and John Keats, the beast wasn't just a creature of myth. It was a mirror held up to the human soul, reflecting our endless chase for beauty, truth, and artistic perfection. Shelley, in his poem Alastor, paints the Chimaera as a fleeting vision, a bright blot on the horizon that the poet-hero pursues to his ruin. The lines he eagerly pursues slash beyond the realms of dream, that fleeting shade, could describe the beast itself, always just out of reach, its lion's roar fading into the wind, its serpent's tail vanishing into mist. Here, the Chimaera isn't a physical threat but a metaphysical one, embodying the torment of inspiration that dances ahead, forever uncaught. Keats, meanwhile, twists the metaphor further. In Endymion, he writes of a thing of beauty that must die, echoing the Chimaera's doomed grandeur. His famous Ode on Melancholy warns against chasing joy too fiercely, lest it turn to poison while the bee-mouth sips. It's the Chimaera's fire-breathing paradox. The closer you get to the sublime, the more it burns you. Yet both poets find a strange glory in the beast's terror. Shelley's Ode to the West Wind roars with the same primal energy as the Chimaera's flames, begging the wind to make me thy lyre even as the forest is. It's a surrender to the monstrous, a willingness to be shattered by beauty, and Keats, in his letters, called this struggle negative capability, the art of dwelling in uncertainty, just as the Chimaera dwells in its hybrid form, neither lion nor goat nor serpent, yet all at once. What makes these romantic visions so gripping is how they invert the myth. The Chimaera isn't slain, it's revered. Its chaos isn't a warning but a muse. And when Keats whispers, beauty is truth, truth beauty, we realize the beast was never the enemy. It was the unanswerable question, the creative fire we can neither tame nor resist. And just as the poets found meaning in the monster's flames, our next legend takes us to an era where science tried to pin the Chimaera down, not with metaphors but with hammers and chisels. The Victorians, ever confident, believed they'd found its bones buried in the earth. But the poets weren't the only ones wrestling with the Chimaera's mystery. As the Victorian era dawned, a new breed of thinkers armed with pickaxes instead of pens set out to prove the beast was more than just a myth. The 19th century was a golden age of fossil hunting, and when paleontologists unearthed strange bones that didn't fit any known creature, some couldn't resist the temptation to label them as remnants of the legendary Chimaera. Imagine the excitement when massive, jagged teeth or fragmented spines were pulled from the earth. With no framework for understanding dinosaurs yet, these discoveries seem to match the hybrid horror of ancient tales. A lion's tooth here, a goat's horn core there, scientists hastily stitched together theories, declaring they'd found proof of the monster's existence. One particularly infamous case involved a fossil assemblage in England, where mismatched bones were proudly displayed as Chimaera remains until sharper minds realized they belonged to entirely different species jumbled by time. This collision of myth and early science reveals just how deeply the Chimaera haunted human imagination, even as geology and paleontology began to reshape our understanding of Earth's history. The lines between fact and folklore blurred. Some scholars, like Richard Owen, the man who later coined the term dinosaur, argued fiercely against these romantic mislabelings, insisting on rigorous classification. Yet the public adored the idea that mythical beasts might once have roamed the earth, and newspapers eagerly fueled the fantasy with sensational headlines. What's fascinating is how these mistakes mirrored the Chimaera's own nature. Just as the monster was a patchwork of creatures, these fossil reconstructions were Frankenstein-like composites pieced together from ignorance and wonder. And while science eventually corrected the record, the episode reminds us that every era molds the Chimaera to its own obsessions, whether poets chasing the sublime or Victorians chasing bones. Now, as we leave the age of fossil hunters behind, another twist awaits. The Chimaera wasn't just inspiring scientists, it was lurking in the shadows of the human mind, waiting for Freud and Jung to give it a new name. But the fossil hunters weren't the last to dissect the Chimaera's meaning. When Sigmund Freud turned his gaze to mythology, he saw something far more personal lurking beneath the monster's scales. In his essay, The Uncanny, Freud explored how certain images like hybrid creatures tap into our deepest, often hidden fears. The Chimaera, with its mismatched body parts and unnatural form, became the perfect symbol for what he called the id, the primal part of our psyche that houses raw desires and repressed childhood terrors. Think about it: a lion's head, a goat's body, a serpent's tail. This grotesque fusion mirrors the chaos of our unconscious mind. Freud argued that such monsters unsettle us because they defy the natural order, just like the forbidden urges we try to bury. A child might fear wild animals or snakes, and the Chimaera combines them all into one nightmare, as if our darkest anxieties have taken physical shape. Freud's theories also shed light on why the Chimaera appears so often in dreams. He believed dreams were the mind's way of processing repressed thoughts, often through disturbing symbols. A patient dreaming of a multi-headed beast might, in Freud's view, be grappling with conflicting desires or unresolved childhood trauma, the Chimaera's fire-breathing rage. That could represent the id's untamed energy, bursting forth when our civilized selves lose control. What's striking is how Freud's interpretation flips the script. Earlier eras saw the Chimaera as an external threat, a monster to slay or a symbol of chaos. But psychoanalysis turned it inward, making the creature a mirror for the battles we fight within ourselves. Even today, therapists might use such myths to help patients confront their own inner chimeras, those tangled fears and desires we'd rather ignore. And speaking of hidden depths, another thinker, Freud's protege Carl Jung, would take this idea even further. But that's a story for the next chapter. Now let's step into the world of Carl Jung, where the Chimaera takes on a whole new layer of meaning. While Freud saw the monster as a symbol of personal repression, Jung believed it represented something far more universal, the shadow archetype. This is the part of our collective unconscious that holds everything we deny or suppress, the dark side of human nature we'd rather not face. And what better embodiment of that than a creature stitched together from our deepest fears? Jung argued that myths like the Chimaera aren't just stories, they're reflections of shared psychological patterns. The lion's ferocity, the goat's stubbornness, the serpent's cunning, these aren't random traits. They're fragments of the shadow, the qualities we disown but still recognize in others. When we encounter such monsters in dreams or art, it's often a call to confront what we've buried. Modern dream studies back this up, showing that hybrid creatures frequently appear during times of inner conflict. A person might dream of a Chimaera when grappling with guilt, anger, or even untapped potential they're afraid to acknowledge. What's fascinating is how Jung's view differs from Freud's. For Freud, the chimera was a personal nightmare. For Jung, it's a shared inheritance, a symbol that resonates across cultures because it taps into something primal in all of us. Therapists today still use this idea, helping patients tame their inner chimeras by integrating those rejected parts of themselves. After all, as Jung famously said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And speaking of fate, the chimera's next evolution would take it far beyond the therapist's couch into the pages of modern fantasy. But that's a tale for another time. Now let's leap from the depths of psychology to the pages of modern fantasy, where the chimera roars back to life in thrilling new ways. This ancient monster hasn't faded into myth, it's been reinvented, appearing in everything from young adult novels to gritty video games. Take Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson series, where the chimera bursts onto the scene with its classic lion-goat-serpent combo, but with a twist, its venomous bite becomes a deadly plot device. Riordan stays surprisingly true to the original myths, even weaving in Bellerophon's legacy, though he amps up the fire-breathing for extra drama. Then there's The Witcher, where the chimera gets a darker, grittier makeover. Here, it's not just a monster, it's a nightmare lurking in misty forests with added scorpion tails or bat wings depending on the adaptation. Some fans argue these changes stray too far from tradition, but others love how they reflect the creature's symbolic flexibility. After all, if the chimera represents chaos, why shouldn't it evolve? But not every modern take hits the mark. Some stories reduce it to a generic boss fight, stripping away its mythic weight. The best adaptations, though, honor its roots while adding fresh layers, whether it's a metaphor for genetic tampering in sci-fi or a manifestation of a hero's inner demons. The chimera's enduring appeal lies in this balance, familiar enough to chill us, yet malleable enough to surprise. And speaking of surprises, wait until you see how this beast conquers a whole new realm: tabletop gaming. But that's a quest for another legend. Now let's roll the dice and step into the world of tabletop gaming, where the chimera isn't just a monster, it's a stat block waiting to challenge players. Dungeons & Dragons gives this ancient beast a fresh set of rules, blending myth with mechanics. In the game, the chimera keeps its iconic three-headed form: lion, goat, and dragon, but adds a few twists to keep adventurers on their toes. Its fire breath attack nods to the original myths, though the damage output might surprise purists. And that venomous bite, it's here too, though some players argue it should be deadlier to match the legends. What's fascinating is how D&D balances the creature's mythic roots with gameplay needs. The chimera's challenge rating, a measure of how tough it is to defeat, sparks endless debates among fans. Some say it's too easy for seasoned players, while others love that it stays accessible for newer parties. Then there's the question of abilities. Should it have wings like some ancient art suggests? Or should it stick to the ground as Homer described? These discussions show just how alive the chimera remains in modern storytelling, not just as a monster, but as a conversation. And speaking of conversations, the next legend takes us even deeper into how this creature fuels creativity, not just in games, but in the minds of artists and filmmakers. But that's a tale for another page. Now let's shift our gaze from the tabletop to the silver screen, where the chimera has roared to life in some of cinema's most memorable moments. One of the standout portrayals comes from the 1981 classic Clash of the Titans, where legendary effects artist Ray Harryhausen brought the beast to life with his signature stop-motion magic. Every frame of Harryhausen's chimera oozes personality: the lion's snarl, the goat's eerie stillness, and the dragon's serpentine menace. It's a masterclass in practical effects, proving that sometimes the old-school techniques capture the monster's soul better than any flashy CGI. But not all cinematic takes hit the mark. Some modern films, eager to dazzle with digital spectacle, strip the chimera of its mythic weight. When the creature becomes just another CGI blur, it loses the tactile terror that made it legendary. Compare that to Harryhausen's version, where every movement feels deliberate, every attack weighted with consequence. Even the way fire spills from its jaws feels more real because it was real frame by painstaking frame. And then there's Godzilla, where the Chimaera's spirit lives on in other mutated forms. While not a direct adaptation, the idea of a hybrid monstrosity wreaking havoc. That's pure Chimaera DNA. Whether it's stop-motion nostalgia or big-budget chaos, one thing's clear: the Chimaera's cinematic journey is as wild and unpredictable as the beast itself. Up next, we'll dive into the fringe theories that claim this monster might not be so mythical after all. Now, let's venture into the realm of cryptozoology, where myth and reality blur in fascinating ways. Some theorists argue the Chimaera wasn't just a legend. It was inspired by real, albeit rare, chimeric animals. Take goat-snake hybrids, for example. Reports of creatures with mismatched body parts pop up in folklore and even modern sightings, fueling speculation that the Chimaera's myth has roots in nature's oddities. But here's where science steps in. Genetic chimeras do exist, just not the fire-breathing, three-headed kind. In biology, a chimera is an organism with cells from two distinct embryos, like a goat born with patches of snake-like scales due to a genetic fluke. These occurrences, while eerie, are far from the monstrous fusion of ancient tales. Modern genetics confirms that cross-species hybrids on the scale of the Chimaera are biologically impossible. No lion, goat, and serpent could combine into a single, functional creature. Nature's rulebook doesn't allow it. Yet, the persistence of these theories reveals something deeper: our enduring fascination with the unnatural. Whether it's a misidentified animal or a hoax, the Chimaera's shadow lingers in our desire to believe the impossible. Next, we'll see how this same allure has tempted corporations to adopt the beast as a mascot, for better or worse. Now let's shift gears and see how the Chimaera has slithered its way into the world of business. Believe it or not, this ancient monster has become a surprising symbol for modern companies, especially in cutting-edge fields like biotechnology. Its hybrid form, part lion, part goat, part serpent, makes it a perfect mascot for firms pushing the boundaries of science, hinting at innovation, fusion, and even a touch of danger. Take biotech companies, for example. Some use the Chimaera in their logos to represent genetic engineering or the merging of different disciplines. It's a bold choice, signaling ambition and the willingness to tackle the unknown. But not everyone sees it as a positive. Critics argue that slapping a mythical beast known for chaos onto a lab coat might send mixed messages. Are these companies creating breakthroughs or playing with fire? And then there are the legal battles. Trademark disputes have erupted over who gets to claim the Chimaera's image. One company might argue their stylized version is unique, while another accuses them of copying an older design. It's ironic, a creature born from ancient myth now fueling modern courtroom drama. What's clear is this: the Chimaera's legacy isn't just confined to old scrolls or epic poems. It's alive in boardrooms and branding, proving that even in the corporate world, we're still drawn to the power and peril of the monstrous. Next, we'll explore how feminists have reclaimed the Chimaera, turning it into a symbol of something far more profound. But let's take a step back from boardrooms and into the realm of poetry and protest, where the Chimaera takes on a whole new meaning. Feminist thinkers and artists have reclaimed this ancient monster, transforming it from a symbol of terror into one of empowerment. Much like Medusa, whose snake-haired visage was once a mark of shame but is now celebrated as a badge of defiance, the Chimaera has become a powerful metaphor for marginalized femininity. Modern poets, in particular, have seized on its hybrid form as a reflection of the complexities women navigate, constantly pieced together from societal expectations, yet never fitting neatly into any single box. One striking example comes from poet Adrian Rich, who wrote, "The monster is not in the labyrinth, it is the labyrinth." Here, the Chimaera becomes a mirror for the tangled, often contradictory pressures women face. its very monstrosity a rebellion against being simplified or silenced. Other writers have gone further, framing the creature's fire breathing not as destruction, but as unapologetic rage, a tool for burning down oppressive structures. Lord famously said, "Women's anger is a liberating force," and the Chimaera's flames embody that idea perfectly. No longer just a beast to be slain, it's a force to be reckoned with, its many voices refusing to be tamed. This reinterpretation isn't just about flipping the script, it's about asking who gets to define what's monstrous in the first place. When women are labeled too much, too loud, too ambitious, too unconventional, the Chimaera's legacy reminds us that hybridity isn't weakness. It's strength, and with that in mind, we'll turn next to how this ancient terror has become a warning for our modern world, through the lens of environmentalism. Now, let's shift our gaze to the modern world, where the Chimaera's legacy takes on a chilling new relevance. Environmentalists have begun to see this ancient monster not just as a myth, but as a stark warning, a symbol of the chaos unleashed when humanity tampers with nature's balance. Think of the Chimaera's unnatural hybrid form, stitched together from mismatched parts, and you'll see eerie parallels to today's debates over genetic engineering. Its very existence feels like a cautionary tale about playing God with DNA, where the line between innovation and monstrosity blurs. This isn't just theoretical. The creature's fire-breathing fury mirrors the escalating rage of climate activists who see the planet's rising temperatures and extreme weather as nature's own version of the Chimaera's flames. In protests against GMOs or deforestation, you'll find signs invoking the monster's image, a reminder that tampering with ecosystems can unleash forces we can't control. Even pop culture has caught on. Eco-horror films like Annihilation or the host feature chimeric creatures born from pollution or genetic experiments, their grotesque forms embodying humanity's reckless disregard for the natural order. But here's the twist: the Chimaera isn't just a villain in this story. Some argue it's a mirror. Its hybrid nature reflects our own world, a patchwork of synthetic and organic, where microplastics swim in our blood and lab-grown meat sits on our plates. The monster's lesson isn't just about fear, it's about humility. Before we create our own modern chimeras, perhaps we should ask, can we handle the consequences? And speaking of consequences, our next stop is the world of heavy metal, where the Chimaera's roar isn't a warning, it's a battle cry. Now, let's crank up the volume and dive into the world of heavy metal, where the Chimaera isn't just a myth, it's a full-blown icon. Bands like Mastodon have embraced the beast's terrifying form, slapping its snarling visage on album covers and weaving its legend into their lyrics. Picture this, a vinyl sleeve with the Chimaera's three heads roaring in vivid detail, its serpent tail coiled around the band's logo like a warning. This isn't just art, it's a declaration of the monster's raw, untamed power, a perfect fit for metal's love of the monstrous and the epic. Listen closely to the lyrics, and you'll catch the Chimaera's fire-breathing fury echoing in verses about chaos, rebellion, and primal rage. Take Mastodon's Blood and Thunder, where the line, "White Whale, Holy Grail," feels like a nod to mythic hunts, not so different from Bellerophon's quest. Other bands, like the Sword or Iron Maiden, drop references to hybrid beasts and ancient horrors, turning the Chimaera into a shorthand for everything metal thrives on: danger, defiance, and a touch of the supernatural. But why does this ancient monster resonate so deeply with metal? It's simple. The Chimaera is metal. Its unnatural form, its defiance of nature's rules, its sheer, unapologetic ferocity, these are the same qualities that define the genre. When a guitarist shreds a solo that sounds like fire, or a drummer's blast beats mimic the creature's chaotic stomp, the Chimaera isn't just a symbol. It's the spirit of metal itself. And speaking of spirits, our next chapter takes a darker turn into the shadowy world of archaeological hoaxes, where the Chimaera's myth has been twisted into something even more deceptive. Now let's peel back the layers of deception and step into the shadowy world of archaeological hoaxes, where the Chimaera's legend has been twisted into outright fraud. Picture this: a dusty crate arrives at a museum, labeled as containing the authentic remains of the Chimaera bones fused together to mimic its lion, goat, and serpent form. The curator's hands tremble with excitement, but the truth is far darker. These aren't ancient relics, they're clever forgeries crafted to cash in on humanity's endless fascination with the monstrous. One of the most infamous scams, the so-called Lycian Chimaera skeleton, a hodgepodge of animal bones glued together and stained to look ancient. In the late 19th century, this fake was sold to a wealthy collector for a small fortune, with the forger claiming it was unearthed near the ruins of Xanthos, the very region where the Chimaera's myth was born. The hoax was so convincing that even experts were fooled for years, until modern testing revealed the bones came from 3 different species, none older than a few decades. But why would anyone go to such lengths? Because the Chimaera's mythic allure is irresistible. Forgery thrives where legend blurs the line between fact and fantasy, and few creatures blur it better than this hybrid horror. From Chimaera teeth carved from ivory to ancient tablets depicting its slaughter, scammers have peddled countless fakes, preying on the desire to believe the impossible. And here's the twist: some of these hoaxes still linger in museum basements or private collections, their true origins buried under layers of tall tales. It's a reminder that even in the modern age, the Chimaera's legacy isn't just about fire and fury, it's about the lies we're willing to swallow for a taste of the extraordinary. Up next, we're blasting off into the cosmos, where the Chimaera's name lives on among the stars, proof that its myth is truly out of this world. From the shadows of forgery to the vast expanse of the cosmos, the Chimaera's legacy takes a celestial turn. It turns out this ancient monster isn't just confined to Earth's myths, it's etched into the stars themselves. NASA and astronomers have playfully honored the creature by naming distant asteroids and exoplanets after it, proving that even science can't resist a good legend. Take asteroid 5181, officially dubbed Chimaera by the International Astronomical Union. While it doesn't actually breathe fire, its erratic orbit and unpredictable path through the solar system make it a fitting namesake for such a chaotic beast. Then there's exoplanet Chimaera b, a gas giant so volatile that its atmosphere churns with storms fierce enough to rival the monster's fiery breath. Scientists joke that if any world could host a real Chimaera, it'd be this one, a place where myth and reality flirt at the edges of imagination. But why name celestial bodies after a creature of nightmare? Because mythology fuels discovery. Astronomers often draw from ancient stories to label the unknown, weaving humanity's oldest tales into the fabric of cutting-edge science. The Chimaera's hybrid nature mirrors the strangeness of space itself, where planets can be molten rock one moment and icy wastelands the next, where stars die in explosions that would make even this monster flinch. So the next time you gaze at the night sky, remember, the Chimaera isn't just a relic of the past, it's out there floating among the constellations, a reminder that our thirst for the extraordinary stretches far beyond Earth. And with that, we've reached the end of our journey, 30 legends unraveled from ancient terror to modern marvel. But before we go, tell us in the comments which Chimaera story left you spellbound. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more deep dives into the myths that shape our world. The legends don't end here, they're just waiting for you to uncover them. From the fiery breath of ancient myths to the glowing screens of modern fantasy, the Chimaera has journeyed through centuries, shape shifting from a symbol of primal terror to a beloved pop culture icon. Its monstrous form, part lion, part goat, part serpent, has fascinated humanity for one simple reason: it embodies the unknown, the chaotic, and the unimaginable. Hybrid creatures like the Chimaera tap into something deep within us, a mix of fear and awe at the unnatural, the uncanny, the impossible made flesh. Think about it, whether it's the Chimaera's fiery rampages in Greek epics, its demonic transformations in medieval art, or its blockbuster battles in today's movies, this creature never really left our collective imagination. It adapts, evolves, and finds new ways to haunt us because monsters like these aren't just stories. They're mirrors. They reflect our deepest fears, our wildest curiosities, and our endless fascination with the boundaries of life itself. So here's the real question: which version of the Chimaera sent chills down your spine? Was it Bellerophon's epic showdown, the eerie volcanic fires of Lycia, or its modern reinvention as a genetic nightmare? Drop your pick in the comments. We'd love to hear which legend stuck with you. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the Chimaera's monstrous legacy, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell for more mythic adventures. The world of legends is vast, and we're just getting started.